when the electricity decides to turn off in the middle of printing a piece. Yay!
Hello everyone and welcome to Moonlight Jewel. And if you haven't seen my last video, welcome to my new studio. I finally moved into my new workspace and this will be the first doll I'm making in this new great studio. Today is all about spooky season. Me and my awesome doll YouTube friends, Anastasia Customs, Kairos Workshop, The Doll Fairy, Delightful, Dollmotion, and Hexgen decided on collaborating again for some Halloween doll action for you guys. Make sure to check out their videos as well after you watch this one here. Before we dive into today's doll, I want to let you guys know that I'm hosting a big contest here on YouTube. You can create your own space-themed doll design and submit it to moonlightjewel300k@gmail.com. When we reach 300,000 subscribers here on YouTube, I will draw a winner, make the doll, and send it to the winner. I will also create a slideshow with all the contestants' designs. However, in order for the winner to be drawn, we need to reach 300,000 subscribers here on YouTube. So make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, comment, and show it to all of your friends and family. But now let's finally talk about the Halloween doll. I've decided to go completely out of my comfort zone for this year's Halloween doll and want to create a dark fantasy doll. Since my boyfriend is a huge fan of Dark Souls, I decided to create Aldrich, the Devourer of Gods from Dark Souls 3. His design and story really spoke to me and I really felt like challenging myself. I also want to give the doll to my boyfriend later, which puts extra pressure on me to make the doll really good. This is a huge project, so without further ado, let's get this bread.
I'm going to use a Frankenstein doll I thrifted on a flea market for this project. She doesn't have her lower arms anymore, but that's fine, because actually I'm only going to use the head of the doll. I wipe the face off first with acetone, Q-tips and cotton pads. Then I remove all the hair from the head with sharp scissors and also get rid of the stubbles inside her head. For that, I took the head off with boiling water, pulled it out with tweezers and ended up with a super clean head. The plan for Aldrich is to make this jointed body with a jointed snaky tail, which is actually Aldrich. The top part of the creature is Gwendolyn, who got eaten by Aldrich. The doll then will be topped with a wig, a skirt, top and cape, and last but not least, he of course receives his crown and stuff. Before getting to work on the doll body, I will be making the wig. I prepared the wig cap and made yarn wefts from silver grey acrylic yarn that I brushed out, straightened and glued into wefts. I begin gluing the wig in the back and work my way up all the way to the parting line. I use hot glue for wig making because I'm super impatient, but you can also use PVA glue. Here I almost reached the part. When the wefts meet on top of the head, I cut the part open and glue the parting wefts to the inside of the wig cap. I slide them in like this and flip them in the opposite direction for a flawless finish. In the end, I just glued the parting back together and the wig is already done. For Aldrich's body and accessories, I commissioned my incredibly talented friend Blue Pixie. You should all give her a follow because she's such a talented 3D modeler. She realized my blueprint in the best way possible and I couldn't thank her more for helping me with this project. Without her, it wouldn't have been possible in this short amount of time. Here's the finished 3D sculpt with the helmet and the staff. Before Blue Pixie was done with the jointing of the body, she already sent the torso to 3D print so I could start making patterns and clothes for Aldrich already. I named this mannequin Torso Tony. Let's make the top of the dress first. I already pinned together the upper lace and lower fabric part for the front here and just sew it on. For the back part, I sew on the lace finished sides into the black fabric part. I do that for both back sides. After that, I pin together the front and side front pieces and hem those seams. Looks good. I did the same to the back and backside pieces and then pin and hem the shoulder seams. Here I already cleaned up the armholes by gluing them down with fabric glue. I then take the collar that I cleaned up on the upper seam too and pin and sew it onto the neckline. I iron everything nice and flat and now just need to close the side seams of the dress. And here's the finished top part of the dress. Why do I have paint on my finger? I just added little snap buttons as a closure. Before getting started on the skirt, I will be using this lavender ball and take off all the single strands of it. It should be just enough for the whole doll. Then I'm taking satin matte black spray paint and spray all of the pieces black. Since I had to do that outside, I did not film it, but they turned out very nice. I left some parts a little purple and green for some color variation. Then I made a waistband and sewed a long ruffled strap of tulle onto it. I then glued some of the vines onto the inside of the skirt for some puffiness. I used hot glue for that because I did not feel like sewing them into place. It looks so cool when flipped over to the finished side. Then I added a closure and put the skirt onto torso Tony. And yes, I stacked and taped him up onto an old acrylic paint bottle so I could give the skirt the right length. Then I glued the vines on top of the skirt. How many, you might ask? Yes. I added almost all of the vines that I had from the lavender ball. In the end, it looked like that. I also added a metal hoop to the bottom of the skirt for some more stand, and it worked very nicely. For the bony decorations on the skirt, I used my Elegoo Mars 3D resin printer and printed a scaled down version from Mr. Bones from the artist
Graphics 25
on Thingiverse. When my resin prints were done, I needed to scrape them off the metal plate first. You always need to wear gloves and a mask because resin can be irritating to skin and lungs. Then I break off the parts of the printing support and clean them with rubbing alcohol in an ultrasound cleaning machine. I also cure them under the UV lamp for a few minutes after that, and then I have some perfectly printed skeletons. The detail printing of a resin printer is amazing. Look at the tiny skull! After shading the skeletons with some pastel chalk dust, I can finally glue them onto the skirt. And here's the finished skirt. I'm happy that it turned out the way I wanted it to be. For the cape, I cut out the back piece and front pieces from black lace and sew them together on the shoulder seams first. After that, I iron everything in place, clean up the front seams and iron the bottom seams. I then made this tiny lace myself by making vector graphics of the lace, cutting it from fabric vinyl, ironing it onto tulle and cutting the edges off. I sew the lace onto the bottom parts of the cape and also clean up the back opening. I made this ornament back piece and place it onto the back gap of the cape. I pin it in place and sew it on by hand with a few stitches. After it was sewn on, I cut off the excess tulle very carefully as close to the edge of the gold as possible. Perfect! Now I put the cape onto torso Tony and added the beaded chains with tealish blue and golden beads to it. This is how it looked when I was done with that. It will actually look a little bit better when he has arms. Then I made these tiny closures from golden vinyl. I cut the vector graphics twice with a Cricut and glued the sticky sides together so I had perfectly little non-sticky golden ornaments. Then I made these tiny loops from elastic yarn and glued them onto the back of the ornaments. Easier said than done, because oh, they were tiny. Looks good. Here I'm adding some beads to the ornaments as well, and also decided it was about time for this video to have my hat in the crafting cam again. Sorry about that. For making the cape close, I added black beads to the loops to hook onto. And the cape is done! I also made this fringe trim myself by making wefts from golden yarn and sewing it to a black ribbon. Turned out better than I thought. In the meantime, I finally could print the jointed body in a light skin tone for Aldrich and can now give the hat the same color by using my airbrush. I waited with that until the body was printed because I wanted an exact color match. And it turned out amazing. And all I needed to do was just buying a new airbrush gun because my old one was completely done. Well, I guess it was about time for it anyways. On to the face up. I start by contouring the face with pastels first after sealing the head with MSC. You might wonder why I decided to use a female monster high hat for this doll and didn't make the hat completely from scratch as well. The reason is because I wanted to try if a monster high hat works with a ball-jointed doll body, and also since Aldrich looks very androgynous, a female hat just fits better in my opinion. And to be honest, I also couldn't get my hands on a matching male doll either. So I went with Frankie's hat. Some blushing on the lips is essential, but I will be very minimal with the lips on this repaint. Here I start to sketch out the eyes. I want to give Aldrich relatively small, almost realistic eyes. It's different from what I usually do, but I love trying out something new. Here I add some shading to the eyes. There are not really a lot of pictures of Aldrich without his crown, except for this one, but at least I knew he has those blind deadish eyes, so I tried going for that. I'm blending together different shades of grey and white. For the outline of the iris, I use some very dark grey to give it a little bit more depth. Time to go for paint. I use gouache paint to lighten up the eye whites first. The brush I'm using is a super tiny nail art brush. I also paint him some white eyebrows that match his hair color. Painting eyebrows is super relaxing for me. Those single brush strokes are so satisfying to make for some reason. Then I'm deepening the lash line with some black and go in with some silver metallic paint on the iris to give it a little bit more sheen. This face up somehow reminds me of my siren doll I made 2 years ago for Halloween. Here I gave him some blushing and some veins on the side of the face. On to the lashes. I paint them completely with brush and white paint. I love painting them, even though it was a little frightening to have no guideline and just being intuitive. Here I'm painting some more veins on his head. I use super watered down purple gouache paint for that. And he also needs some lower lashes. Turning the head upside down and back helps a lot with those small details. Awesome! Almost done! Last but not least, I'm adding some gloss to the lips and this time also to his eyes, since the face-up is very simple and minimal. I use Liquitex High Gloss Varnish for that. Finally, time to work on the body. I sanded all the pieces and sprayed them with MSC to give them some shading and veins too. Here the upper torso is already done. What a big difference compared to no shading. For the wrist joints I already glued in magnets and I drilled a tiny hole into them to insert a little metal bridge. In this case a pinning needle that I cut into the right length. And then I just glue it in place with some skin colored resin I drop onto the little hole. Looks good! Then I can already string the arms. I pull a loop of elastic ribbon through the armholes first on one side, then the other. Like so. Then I pull the arm pieces onto the elastic ribbon-like beads. To hook the wrist joints later, I put some toothpicks to the end of the arms. And here's the torso with the strong arms. The movability is really good because he has double jointed elbows and an additional wrist joint. It makes him look creepy, but also pretty cool. He turned out to be a perfect brush holder as well. Did I just create myself a smart doll? While I managed to print the body for Aldrich just fine, after that I wanted to print the tail, but my electricity decided to shut off in the middle of printing, leaving me with this half-printed piece, and I also kept getting misprints and I didn't know why. I then figured out that my LCD screen of the printer needed a replacement, so I ordered one to exchange it. But because the deadline of the doll was so close and I had to print 12 tail pieces with 9 to 11 hours of printing time on each piece, I decided to bite the sour apple and got myself another Elegoo Mars printer. Now I could finally print the tail pieces and work on them in time. Here's the first piece. As you can see, it has some marks from the supports on the back that I will remove with my Dremel first. This took quite a while. Now it looks funky, so I decided to paint it black with some acrylic paint. After the black coating, I added some red diluted paint for some more depth. Then I mixed some fake flash with Uhu all-purpose glue and acrylic paint and applied it to the piece with a toothpick. The result is so cool and gory, but still very subtle. I'm very impressed that this technique worked out so well. Blech, it's not completely dry yet though. I still had some misprints every now and then because of the support issues, but this one I think is fixable. I'll just use some epoxy sculpt clay for that. And magic! Yep, that should work just fine. The last piece of the tail I had to print in 2 pieces because of how huge it was and put them together like this. Also, you can see I was running out of black resin. Oopsie. Now I'm just going to cover up the seam with UV resin. I slowly lost my sanity through this time of the process.
Where is my little UV lamp?
After I finally found it, I could cover up the seam. After I painted all the tail pieces, let's see if I can fit them onto my screen. They barely fit and the doll is still topped with the torso and head. Let's string him. I warmed up the head so it's easier to get it onto the neck. As you can see, I cut open the head so I'm able to insert the elastic through the head and secure it with an S-hook. Then I'm starting to string him and first add the lower torso and all the 12 tail pieces. This doll's full length is about 2 feet, but he won't be that tall since I want to pose the tail like a snake later on. And this is how he looked full strung. I definitely underestimated the size and the weight of this doll. I think he weighs around 10 pounds. Now I just decorate the tail by using the leftover vines from the skirt and hot glue. I can just paint over these hot glue spots later on. Time for the scythe. I printed this one from clear resin and just smoothed out the surface with a soft sanding sponge. Then I'm taking a tiny LED, but because I only had white ones, I used purple window color to paint the LED purple. Since window color dries translucent, it should work. My dad helped me wire up the staff. And yes, it's purple, although you can absolutely not see it on the cam. Then I used some super glue and glue the LED into the socket of the scythe. Now I'm hand sculpting the remaining parts on the staff. For that I'm also using epoxy clay. With a silicone tool I can work on the clay and shape it nicely. And here you can finally see the light is indeed purple. After 24 hours the stuff was dry and ready to paint. I painted completely black with acrylic paint first. Then I want to add some golden parts, and for that I'm using some clear UV resin on the parts I want to have metallic looking. I cure it under the UV lamp for a few minutes. And then comes the fun part, golden metallic chrome powder. This one is actually for nail art and it works fantastic. Last but not least, I'm glossing the blade of the scythe with clear UV resin and cure it thoroughly. Through this process, the blade becomes completely clear. And here's the finished staff. Let's see how it looks in the dark. Ah, it looks so good! Let's finally make the piece I was looking forward the most to. The crown. helmet? Crowmet? It has a front and back part, and I printed it from black resin. The crown has inlets for magnets, so it will snap together easily like this. I gloss it with some clear UV resin as well and chromify it with metallic powder. I just need to add magnets and the crown is done. It's so shiny and I'm so in love with it. And yeah, we're finally done! I decided to add some teeth to the tail in the end for some creepiness as well. He's definitely my most expensive custom doll I have ever made, considering the fact that I had to buy a second 3D printer and so much resin for him. I think I almost spent around $500 in the end, but he was worth all of the money and all of the struggle.
And here's the finished doll, Aldrich, the Devourer of Gods. I think he represents the spooky season perfectly. How do you like him? Even though he turned out to be a true boss fight to make and cost us several $100s and my sanity, I'm extremely proud of this doll. What's your favorite part? I'm extremely in love with the scythe and the crown. Thank you so much for being part of this incredible journey, and also thanks to all of my patrons. Without your support, this would have been never possible, so thank you so much. By the way, the physical reward tiers are open again, so you can get fabric prints, repaints, or even little doll clothes sent to your home every month. So go check out my Patreon, link is in the description box below. And also, if you like my videos, please make sure to subscribe to my channel and like and comment under my videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, see you in the next video, and happy Halloween! Bye!
I played this game and I approve.